Welcome back for the post-lunch session of this odyssey into everyday dentistry from diagnostic skills to clinical expertise. And I hope and will try not to put you to sleep. Let's carry on then. I will now be presenting a very rare and interesting case of a pterygohamela syndrome, which is most often misdiagnosed due to lack of proper understanding of its varied clinical presentation. This patient was referred to me by one of our very own group members, Dr. Aisha from Assam, for a second opinion. The patient is a 16-year-old female. The first thing that's obvious looking at her is she's severely pale and lean and underweight for her height and age. She weighed around 45 kilos. The patient had a history of vague pain spread over her back of the head, over her neck bilaterally, extending up to the nape, which she wasn't able to localize to a particular region. She had limitations in her jaw movements. The pain was continuous and had made her daily life an ordeal. It was even difficult for her to drink water or swallow her own saliva, and this left her sleepless most of the nights. Now let's have a look at her family and medical history. There was no significant correlational health issues to the present problem, and there was nothing of relevance from her family side, and hence she was referred to a dentist for intraoral evaluation in terms of identification of this vague pain. Coming to her dental history, her mouth opening was around 2 finger width. The jaw movements were compromised with mild tenderness on bilaterally. The occlusion was satisfactory. Intraorally, there was 1.8, 2.8, 3.7 and 3.8 with soft tissue impactions, and the 4.8 was premature erupted. As a professional diagnosis, one would say it would categorize it into a atypical facial pain or a temporomandibular dysfunction. Her attending dentist considered it as a temporomandibular dysfunction, and then the patient was referred for further evaluation and symptomatic management. Let's have a look at the investigations and discussion section now. Under the preliminary investigations, an OPG was acquired, and based on the OPG findings, according to the attending dentist, the patient was put on symptomatic management with NSAIDs and a soft splint with referral for TMD counseling. The problem with the initial diagnosis as to be categorized under a pain disorder is it has a very daunting task to isolate its etiology, and the pursuit should never be abandoned as is most of the times. Due to the misdiagnosis or lack of proper identification of the cause, the patient was then referred to multiple doctors, suggesting multiple management modalities with no relief of symptoms. She was even considered for a psych evaluation due to her mental state. It is very sad, but it's true. Let's have a look at her symptoms once again. She had pain in soft palate and pharynx based on a difficulty to drink or swallow. OPG revealed elongated styloids, and the possible causes can be suggestive of neuralgias, myofascial pain dysfunction syndrome, temporomandibular dysfunctions, and otitis media due to impacted third molars. The other causes may be elongation of pterygoid hamuli or osteophyte or bursa of the hamulus. When the patient was referred to us at this stage, we chose to send her for more definitive investigative procedures, such as a repeat OPG as the previous one was more than a year old. 3D CBCT scan was requested, and an MRI along with a pre-psych evaluation would be considered if nothing came out from the CBCT scan. The OPG confirmed the initial clinical findings as discussed before. There was a possible elongation of bilateral pterygoid processes. Along with the possible pterygoid elongation, there was an incidental finding of pterygoalar foramen on the left side, which I will demonstrate on the next slide. I have marked the elongated pterygoid plates bilaterally, and the small yellow circle depicts the pterygoalar foramen over the left side. The three-dimensional CT scan images confirm the presence of a left-sided pterygoalar foramen as well as the elongation of the pterygoid plates with the pterygoid tubercles bilaterally. You can appreciate the foramen and the tubercle in this slide, which is the left-sided view of the 3D reconstruction image of the scan. This is the coronal section with orientation from the posterior to the anterior direction, revealing the elongation of the bilateral pterygoid hamulus. This slide is a reconstruction of the entire palate and posterior aspect of the pterygoid plates, wherein we can appreciate the acute angle of the pterygoid hamulus viewing from the soft palate side. When we measured the pterygoid hamulus bilaterally, the right-sided hamulus measured 15.5 millimeters and left-sided hamulus measured 12.6 millimeters, whereas the normal range is around 4.9 to 7.2 millimeters. With this revelation, we arrive at a definitive diagnosis of hamular process bursitis or the hamular process elongation. We based it on the reported history, the clinical findings, and also we confirmed it with anesthetic infiltration into the hamular region, which totally eliminated the pain for the patient. The line of management involved primarily a conservative approach, as is in the norm, which was followed by surgical correction of the elongated hamuli. After about 6 months of conservative management with corticosteroids being injected directly over the hamular region, the patient opted for a surgical solution for her suffering. In this slide, you can see the exposed hamulus over the right side, just behind the tuberosity. The surgery was done bilaterally, and as you can see in this slide, the excised specimen from both the left and the right sides, the top one being from the right and the bottom specimen being from the left side. As on today, it's been 2 years post-surgery and the patient is symptom-free, which has allowed her to back to being considered normal. In summary, I would like to state that the diagnostic anesthetic testing is the best way to confirm this entity, which is a pterygohamular bursitis, and the knowledge and recognition of this disorder helps the clinician in eliminating the patient's suffering. Finally, the proper diagnosis of bursitis of the hamular process would have reduced the need for so many previous unnecessary and often invasive procedures that may actually not help the patient but also prolong the agony or worse yet, enhance it. In conclusion, the difficulty in diagnosing such cases is probably attributed due to the lack of literature pertaining to the bursitis of hamular process. So far, only around 50 cases have been published, and among which one is this case. Thank you.